Picture yourself standing in front of a museum case. Inside it, a single dagger. And a materials engineer, a real one, with a modern lab behind him, stands beside you and admits, out loud, on record, that he cannot make it. Not with a modern forge. Not with a laser. Not with a diagram of every atom inside it. That blade was hammered out by hands that had never heard the word chemistry, thousands of years before anyone could spell carbon. You carry a phone that maps the ocean floor. You have GPS, refrigeration, steel poured by machines that never sleep. You think of the ancient world as the beginning of the climb, the crude bottom of the ladder. But some of the things those hands built, we still can't rebuild. Not, it would be hard. Can't. The blade that shouldn't exist. The machine that shouldn't exist. The map with no instruments. And the one on your screen glowing red that nobody says out loud. 4 ancient technologies that make modern engineers go quiet. And we're going to open each one up. Start with the blade. Damascus steel. You've maybe heard the name on a kitchen knife, but that's marketing. The real thing died out around the 1700s and never came back. Picture it in your hand. The surface isn't smooth silver. It runs with wavy, flowing lines, like water frozen mid-ripple, and every blade's pattern is different. It could bend around your wrist and snap back straight. It held an edge that would shave the hair off your arm, while European swords of the same century chipped like glass. But here's the catch. To pull this off, they were doing something no blacksmith understood for another 1,000 years. They were engineering the steel at a scale no eye can see. When modern scientists finally put a genuine Damascus blade under an electron microscope, they found carbon nanotubes. Nanotubes. The material we act like we discovered in the 1990s. The stuff we build spacecraft dreams around. Locked inside a weapon forged in the Middle Ages. And nanowires of cementite threaded through the metal, giving it that impossible mix of hard edge and flexible spine. The Smiths didn't know any of that. They followed a recipe passed mouth to mouth, a specific ore from India with just the right trace impurities, a heating and cooling rhythm timed by color and instinct. When that ore ran out and the recipe broke down, the whole craft vanished. Dozens of blacksmiths across 3 centuries have tried to reverse engineer it since, and the best they manage is a look-alike, not the real internal structure. Sit with that for a moment. We have the blade. We have the microscope. We can see exactly what's inside it. And we still can't tell you the exact steps to build another one. So the sword defeats us with a secret it hides at the scale of atoms. But the next object doesn't hide anything at all. It sits open, every gear exposed, and that's precisely what makes it worse. In 1901, divers pulled a lump of corroded bronze out of a shipwreck off a Greek island called Antikythera. It looked like a rock. For decades, it sat in a drawer, ignored. Then someone X-rayed it. Here's the twist nobody expects. Inside that lump were gears. Not 1 or 2. More than 30 interlocking bronze gears, cut with teeth so fine and so precise that when the world finally rebuilt it, they realized what it did. You turn a little crank on the side, and the front dials show you the position of the sun, the moon, its phase, the 5 planets the ancients could see. Turn it further, and it predicts eclipses, years in advance, to the day. It even tracked the 4-year cycle of the ancient Olympic Games. This is a hand-cranked computer, a mechanical model of the solar system, built more than 2,000 years ago. That's the machine glowing gold on your screen, gears turning under their own inner light. And the reason a stick figure stares at it in fear is that it is roughly 1,400 years ahead of anything else we've ever found. Nothing this complex appears again until European clocks in the 14th century. 1,400 years of silence. So here's the real question. Where are the others? Because you don't build a machine this precise on your first try. The teeth are cut by someone who had done it many times, following techniques from a workshop with a tradition behind it. That means there was a whole lineage of these instruments. And every single one but this melted down, corroded, or vanished into the sea. We have one survivor of a technology we didn't even believe existed. We've reconstructed the gears. But we still can't fully explain how a Bronze Age workshop reached that level of miniature precision without a single modern tool. You've now seen two things we can copy the shape of, but can't honestly claim to master: the blade and the machine. But those were made by people building objects to hold in their hands. The next one was made by people crossing a horizon they couldn't even see, with no instrument at all. Forget objects for a second. Look at a map of the Pacific Ocean. Thousands of tiny islands scattered across an emptiness so vast it could swallow every landmass on Earth with room to spare. And ancient people found them, settled them, on purpose. Here's the part rarely mentioned. They did it with no compass, no sextant, no clock. And a clock is what European sailors needed to know their longitude, which they didn't crack until the 1700s. The Polynesians were arriving at Pinpoint Islands 3,000 kilometers away, 1,000 years earlier, with none of it. So how? They read the ocean itself as an instrument. A navigator would lie down in the bottom of the canoe and feel the swells through his own spine, reading how waves bent and bounced around islands still below the horizon, hundreds of kilometers off. They memorized the rising and setting points of over 200 stars, a moving map spinning across the whole night sky. They watched the flight lines of birds at dusk, the color of the water, a specific cloud that only forms over a hidden lagoon. One number. The island of Hawaii sits alone in the largest ocean on the planet, and they hit it, dead on, in an open wooden canoe. The best modern sailors, stripped of their instruments, get handed this knowledge and still spend decades learning to trust it, and most never fully do. It lives in the body, not on paper, which is exactly why we can't download it. So you've beaten 3 of them now? The blade we can't forge, the machine we can't fully explain, the ocean crossed with no instrument. 3 ancient technologies that make our engineers go quiet. But there's a fourth, the one glowing red on your screen, the one the others don't like to talk about, because it isn't a weapon or a clock or a root. It's shaped out of the hardest, most stubborn stone on Earth, and it does something we still cannot copy on demand. Here's what nobody mentions about the oldest ambition of all: shaping the hardest stone on Earth into something so perfect it shouldn't be possible with what they had. Look at the object glowing red on your screen. A vessel cut from solid hard stone, polished until it catches the light like glass, its inner walls sweeping symmetrical and smooth. Then look wider. The granite boxes inside the Great Pyramid, the shaped stone temples of southern India, the joins in the Andes where 2 blocks meet so tight you can't slip a razor between them. Granite, one of the hardest materials on Earth, cut into shapes with inside corners so sharp, surfaces so flat, that a laser-flat measuring plate rocks on nothing. Holes bored straight through solid granite. Some of these are cut to a tolerance you'd expect from a machine shop, not a copper chisel. And that's the problem. The tools we find beside them are copper. Copper is soft, far softer than granite. Drag a copper tool across granite, and the granite eats the copper, not the other way around. So here's the uncomfortable question underneath all of this. How do you cut the hardest thing with one of the softest? The honest answer is that we have theories. Wet sand as an abrasive, dragged for weeks under a copper blade. Hardened bronze, endless patience. We can reproduce some of it in a lab, slowly, painfully. But the flatness, the razor-sharp inner corners, the drilled cores that spiral through granite faster than our own test drills manage, the polished stone vessels thinner and truer than a modern lathe can safely turn. The best experts will tell you, quietly, that we can explain the how in principle and still cannot fully reproduce the what. Sit with that for a moment. That's why the artifact on your screen glows red, not because it's cursed, but because it's the one that unsettles engineers the most. A blade we can photograph atom by atom and not rebuild. A machine we can spin and not source. A route we can map and not learn. And a stone vessel we can measure and not match. So look back at where you started. You carry a phone that maps the ocean floor. You have GPS, refrigeration, steel, poured by machines that never sleep. You call the ancient world the crude bottom of the ladder. But the dagger with nanotubes inside it, we still can't forge that. The bronze computer 1400 years ahead of its time, we've rebuilt its gears and still can't explain the hands that first cut them. The path across the widest ocean on Earth, no compass, no clock. It lives in the body and can't be downloaded. And the hard stone shaped sharper and truer than a copper tool has any right to shape it. We can measure it to the millimeter and still not match it. 4 technologies. 4 hands that never heard the word engineer. And 4 times we've had to stand in a museum, holding every modern tool we own, and admit we can't do it. The ladder you pictured? You're not standing at the top of it. In places, you're standing below a rung that snapped off centuries ago and nobody's been able to nail back. If it does something to you to know that the people who came before us outbuilt us in ways we still can't crack, subscribe and hit the bell. Think of it as your standing invitation to every lost recipe we managed to dig back up. And tell me one thing down in the comments. If you could stand over the shoulder of just one of these makers and finally watch how they did it, the swordsmith, the gear cutter, the navigator, or the stone cutter, which one would you pick? Say it before you scroll. I'll be reading.